So bringing it full circle again, Station 19's truck Medic 1. Welcome back to Heroes Next Door. Thank you all for watching. Today we're back in this studio and we're answering questions. Many of the questions that you guys have put in our comments have been really good. We appreciate them. Keep bringing them in. Some of the questions that came across on our what's a MICU versus a chase car, what's in a $200,000 ambulance, and how often do ambulances crash is a question relates almost back to our reactive videos of, there's a rig out there in Station 19 called Medic 1. It's a mobile surgical unit that's set up for 911 service, and we want to kind of address, is this real or not real, and what would it take? How far off are we to it if it's not real? So let me break it down just a little bit. This is Station 19's Medic 1, and it's a mobile surgical unit. In this thing, right from the beginning, he talks about they have mobile x-ray, they have ultrasound, they have surgical lighting that's auto-adjusting, they have ECMO machines. Very cool things to have, but is it realistic in a 911 service? I don't believe so, and here's the reason why. One, if it is a mobile ER, you're gonna have to have staff in order to do surgery on that. Just having one doc and a paramedic, or a paramedic and an EMT to help out with this isn't enough staff to do surgery. The other thing is, if it's going to do surgery, you need a sterile environment. So by opening up the back doors or the side door to get in it and get onto a scene, you automatically contaminate many of the products or surfaces within that unit. So that's a real big hurdle that I can't figure out how they're trying to overcome that. The other thing that they may have is speed of getting to the scene. Yes, it's an ambulance, it's 911 service, but with all that equipment in it, the size of the vehicle that you're gonna have to have is huge. I looked at it comparably to some of those critical care trucks, maybe a command unit, or some of the mobile mass casualty buses. That's the size that you're gonna have to have. And if you've ever had the opportunity or need for a mobile command unit or one of those buses, you know that usually comes in 20, 30, 40 minutes after the fact. Bringing a surgical unit that way just isn't feasible. The other thing is what is their ultimate goal, having a mobile surgical unit? Yes, surgery is important. It's within that golden rule, and that's kind of where I think they get the concept from it. But realistically, we as healthcare providers have the ability to relatively stabilize most patients, put them in either in an aircraft, like a helicopter, or get them to the local trauma center within that period of time and get them to the OR within that golden hour. So by creating a mobile surgical unit kind of defeats the purpose, and the cost of that is going to be outrageous. So that's my kind of view on Station 19's mobile surgical unit, that it's not realistic, but it has some really cool things. The question then becomes, what is out there? What kind of technologies do we have that play a role in our healthcare? And is there something else, just beyond the horizon that we're going to look forward to? Some of the things that are real and that are on the horizon for us to use are pretty cool. And I'm going to kind of break it down a little bit and tell you some of the things that are currently out there being used. One, let's talk about iStats. iStats is a way to do blood work pre-hospitally. You take a finger prick or a blood sample, you run it through the machine, you can get a lot of information. That's out there, that's being used in some counties. The other thing is, do we have ultrasounds? There's portable ultrasounds. Is that useful for us? I believe it is, especially if we have a difficult IV, rather than going to an IO or not getting a line at all, using ultrasound. In the future, can we use that for a fast exam and looking for internal injuries or a collapsed lung or something like that? Absolutely. So portable ultrasounds are very important, and they have a couple of those. You can run one right from your cell phone. The other thing that I've seen out there, and we're going to be doing a station rigs on this, is mobile CT scanners. And mobile CT scanners are the entire truck. It's not really set up as a 911 service. It's once we get there, we determine that this person is having stroke, we call them out to us. For that truck to carry the equipment that we have, all the extrication equipment, just really isn't feasible, but it is important to get that kind of truck out to our scene and start some of those treatments early. So I can understand that. Mobile x-ray, there are mobile x-ray units. They go to nursing homes all the time. But again, these are trucks that are completely by themselves and don't really carry all the emergency equipment that we have to carry in the 911 service. There are critical care transport trucks out there that are very large. Some of them hold one stretcher, some hold two stretchers, maybe an isolette. They're going to bring the ECMO machines. They talked about an ECMO in Station 19 that's in there. Very cool to have again. Is that going to be necessary for a 911 service? I don't think so. I think it remains on a critical care transport truck. You have to have that capability. These mobile ECMO machines are very small nowadays, so it is a very useful tool. The other technology that's going into many of these ambulances are the way they're designed as far as the materials that they're using. The countertops are antibacterial. Cabinets are sealed. You have seat covers that are antibacterial. You have UV lighting now that are in the ambulances to help kill a lot of these viruses and bacteria. It started way back when Ebola was starting to make its way over to America, so we started kind of figuring it out. So having a way to decon an ambulance rather than just wiping everything down and get back into service is important. That technology is here. It's being used today. Very cool to see. The other things that we are looking at are smart ambulances, for lack of a better term. Smart ambulances are more connected to the internet, and we now have the ability to FaceTime pretty much with anybody. So having an ambulance that has a good Wi-Fi service or satellite connection to a hospital, you can have essentially a doctor on your truck even though they're not going with you. You can either use them as a consult, you can use them as an assessment tool. There's many different ways to kind of practice that. My personal feeling is we're trained high enough to handle most of the emergencies, but there's those times where we need to get a doctor involved, either for a patient refusal, or we might be struggling with a differential diagnosis. Doing a mobile consult with a FaceTime or a Zoom is pretty important, and that would be a great tool. The other things that are out there are coming up are the autonomous driving units. I'm a little leery. I'm a driver. I love to drive vehicles, whether that's my own personal truck or an ambulance. So having somebody take over and drive that to the hospital, we'll see how it goes. But think about it. You are running a two-man crew. We're trying to save money as best we can. So we're running two-man crews. I get a critical patient. How awesome would it be for me to grab my partner from that driver's seat into the back of the ambulance, and we both can work on the patient while we're going to the hospital, because the ambulance itself knows exactly where to go. Another piece of technology, a lot of us have seen Opticoms. I do a recent podcast about it, so if you haven't seen that, it's called Eye on Opticoms. We do a podcast about these Opticoms. Well, using global satellite positioning and using the internet and those kind of things helps guide that truck to the hospital of your destination. You just tell it where it needs to go and let it roll, and you have more hands in the back of the truck really providing the care that needs to be done. It changes the lights on the way to the hospital, so the traffic patterns are easier. It can sense the different traffic patterns that are ahead of you. Many of us use apps like Waze that tells us, the way I'm traveling now, is there a cop ahead of me? Is there traffic ahead of me? Well, put that technology back into an ambulance and imagine how easy it will be for us to say, head to ABC Hospital, and it picks the most appropriate route for the fastest amount of time with the traffic patterns that are current for the day and the light that are going to change ahead of you. All that stuff really comes into play. Very cool stuff, and this stuff is currently out there. Now, not everyone's using it, and some of it's in trial, but it's coming. One last thing that we want to talk about as far as technology is one of the biggest hurdles we need to overcome are our materials that we use, our consumables. So how many Band-Aids, how many 2x2s, how much medication do we have on board, and trying to manage that in an appropriate way. Well, they have automated management systems, and this one is called the Waze Smart Assistance Program. When you take a 2x2 out of the cabinet, the ambulance automatically calculates that and says, hey, we need to either order more or you still have enough in there, and it inventories it for you through the computer on the truck. Very cool to have. It makes our job as administrators just that much easier, and it holds a little bit of accountability. If all of a sudden my supplies are really going low and I only had 4 or 5 patients, we know where they're going, we know the staff that's on it, and the truck itself is helping you track that kind of thing. This technology is out there today. Very cool to have. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, I'm a little skeptical of all this technology, all this knowledge. It's kind of like when we first put Alexa into our houses, we put all these cameras in our houses to keep track of things. Who's listening to us? What big brother is watching us, right? That's always been my fear. But if we're doing the job right and we're doing what we need to do for our patients, that skepticism diminishes over time. We realize that these are not here to hinder us. We think if we have to consult with a doctor or the doctor's watching us, it's going to be a hinder. It's really not. It gives us that extra tool in our toolbox to do the job most appropriately for the patients. And everything that we do is about patient care, right? That's what we're supposed to be thinking. There is actually an article in the Journal of Emergency Medicine that talks about this, and they are in agreement that, you know, technology is the future, and we are, as ambulance services, keeping up. There are many ambulance manufacturers out there that are building these kind of trucks. I just went on the internet and did a real quick search and came up with 21 different ambulance manufacturers, and each one is trying to outdo the other. The question becomes for me is, are they going too fast? Is it not fast enough? Are we keeping up? From what I can tell, we're keeping up, but we're gonna keep a close eye on it. All that being said, I'm gonna kind of bring it back a little bit. There are a couple things that I haven't come across. If you guys have come across it, please let me know. This is kind of my wish list, right? My wish list is to have a cot that's secured in an ambulance that can raise up or down, right? We always put the cots in the truck, we lock them into the antlers up front, and they're stuck there. I can't raise that patient. Well, think about the doctors that do intubation, or the respiratory therapist that does an intubation in the ER or in an OR. They bring that bed up to what their level needs to be to make themselves most successful. Why is it that we have a stretcher that locks into an antler and it's powered, because Stryker does a power stretcher, actually many of the manufacturers do power stretchers, but I can't get that to lift up even though it's locked in? I would really like to see that. I think that would make a big difference on our success and failures for intubations. The other thing is the seating. The seating in an ambulance is difficult at times. We talked about this during the how often do ambulances crash, and the seating is difficult because of the location. It's difficult because of the restraints. It's difficult because it may not be in the right position. I've had the opportunity to work both in an aircraft and an ambulance. What I would like to see, again, this is kind of my wish list, I would like to see some of those aircraft seatings where I can move it forward, backward, twist it, turn it, all next to the patient inside of an ambulance somehow. There are some that slide up, slide down, but the restraint system is totally different. So if I can get a stretcher that goes up and a seat that moves into the right position so I can do a good intubation, is going to make a huge difference on my success of treating patients. Now that's just intubation, but imagine an IV. I got to get to the other side of a patient, or I need to get lower, or I need to put an IO in a leg. Well, if I can stay in my seat, stay secured, and I can able to move back and forth like I do in a helicopter, that'd be pretty cool to see. So speaking of helicopters are $3-4 million. Station 19's truck, if we really take all the things they're putting into this truck, this thing would be the $3 to $5 million. For just a truck, right? Yeah, we have fire trucks that are that high, but having an ambulance service that you're going to replace this thing in 2 to 3 years, you know, depending on how many call volumes you do, just isn't realistic. When you talk about an aircraft that's going, you know, $3-5 million, you're keeping that aircraft for 10, 15 years. And if I really look at some of the clips, I was able to find a couple of clips. The height of this truck is just outrageous. Yes, we have stretchers that raise by themselves. We have automatic load stretchers, but if you really look at the back of this truck, it is 3 steps deep and almost chest high on an average human being. There is no way we're gonna get a stretcher in there. And in this one, they don't even have a lockdown or the antlers that I talked about to lock down this stretcher. So bringing it full circle again, Station 19's truck Medic 1, it's good in concept, but realistically, it's just not there. Once again, this is Heroes Next Door. We're answering your questions, so we appreciate you. Do us a favor, hit that subscribe, hit that notification, and we'll keep bringing you more.